Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Brunell. I'm the host of the Coin Stories podcast. First of all, I want to apologize for the voice I woke up with this morning. So I will try to turn it over to the panelists as quickly as possible. But I do host Coin Stories, which is a podcast dedicated to educating the general public about Bitcoin, how it's a powerful savings technology, and why everyone should have it in their portfolio. So, with that, I want to introduce today's panel about why this halving is different. Maxim Balashevich of Santiment AG. He's the founder and CEO of Santiment, which is a data analytics platform. Reena Shah of Trust Machines. She is VP of Product and Operations. And Matthew Siegel of VanEck. He is the head of Digital Assets Research. So first of all, for those who might not be familiar with work, I just want to go around and maybe give just a couple of sentences each on what you do and why you're passionate about Bitcoin.
Hey everyone, Matthew Siegel. I run digital assets research at VanEck. We are a traditional asset manager with about 100 billion in assets under management, and we run close to 20 different digital asset strategies comprising about 1.5 billion in assets. We recently brought one of the spot Bitcoin ETFs to market. The ticker is on my hat, and we also run a couple of different actively managed liquid token strategies, one of which I manage, focused on L1s, L2s, dApps, and of course, Bitcoin.
Cool, thanks. I think I will hang, so to say, on your tail. In Sentiment, for over than 7 years, our passion have always been to collect, standardize, package properly, and deliver the data, which is relevant for doing, among others, research you might be doing. My own passion ever since I started was about behavior analytics. So I try to understand underlying dynamics, why things happening, when they happening, what it means. And it includes a lot of on-chain data, social data, dev activity data, market data. It's a vast field, probably not as big as what you're doing, but in terms of data, maybe even bigger, as we are providing data. And for whatever questions or topics we touch today, we will cover what we can. And of course, Bitcoin is the major trend identifier. You always know where's the market if you know what's going on with Bitcoin. But we'll see if we get to how detailed our conversation will get.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reena. I'm with Trust Machines. Trust Machines is a company that builds Bitcoin products for Bitcoiners and beyond. Notably, we have the Leather Wallet, a growing Bitcoin Web3 wallet that supports Bitcoin, runes, and other L2 type assets. And I've been pretty passionate about Bitcoin for a number of years. Ironically, I started mining Bitcoin in 2012 while working out in the oil rigs.
Wow, that is super impressive. I wish I knew about Bitcoin in 2012. Let's get right into the topic of the halving, because this one took place in a world that's very different from the one that Satoshi Nakamoto published the white paper in. We have institutional adoption now, thanks to the spot Bitcoin ETFs. We're no longer in that QE infinity zero interest rate policy environment, although we might be again in the future. We have very serious geopolitical conflicts happening around us that obviously affect the macro landscape. So I'd love to hear from each of you about the data that you're following, showing how this halving really is different and what market forces are at play.
Wait, so if you want, I can
go for it, Maxim.
Yeah, it's a very good introduction summary. You mentioned all the points which are indeed different. And after mentioning it, it's quite obvious, as I've never been in this situation before. No one probably really knows what will happen in the next year. It's a kind of will be honest answer. Like there is no experience, past experience. And even though in investment anyway, basing your decision based on the past experience is the tricky way, you might be wrong too. But now in a situation we've never been before. And we've done quite a few cycles. So based on the data I'm observing, it's quite conflicting one. On one side, there've been typical signs of very topish formation, like everyone expecting 200, 300,000. and everyone is super excited, which is normally exactly, okay, we arrived at the top, so time to go down on one side. Yeah. On the other side, the typical redistribution cycle, I know if we get to charts, I could show charts. I prepared some chart layouts, which normally takes those who have been lucky or smart or whatever enough to accumulate in the previous cycles, also bear market, they start part of the redistributing in the bull market. We are around 6 months in the process, not 1 year. As you might see if you look in the price now, redistribution process always starts later. People wait, or it starts, we are 6 months, and typically it's 12 months. So it's a good sign. We might have still at least 6 months of advancement in the price. Yeah, I will stop on this. Yeah, so it's just 2 major data points I'm observing. There are 3 or 4 more I prepared, but it's like 2 major ones. One is extreme exciting, and you see accumulation of very small participants, their volume growing or their holding growing. Another side, which is not probably that good. Big players accumulated before or around announcement of ETF, and they've been relatively quiet.
So Maxim, before Matthew and Rena weigh in, are you kind of saying that we're in the middle of maybe a bull run? Because I've heard other analysts, including Lynn Alden, say something similar. But for a lot of us, I would argue it doesn't even feel like the bull market has fully started yet.
Oh, no. Don't make a mistake. You remember, I don't know if you noticed, there was a huge activity around meme coins. And it means we're at least in the middle, when not beyond the middle. This kind of activity, when irrationality kicks in and people speculate, earn or lost, or participate in something which is beyond all fundamental models or anything, it's a sign we are beyond the middle. So rest assured, middle is already past.
Yeah, I agree with Maxim. I think it's still a bull market. I know the topic of this panel is what's different about this halving, but I just want to focus first on what's similar. And I think there's good reason to believe that Satoshi set the 4-year cycle to line up with the US election cycle, and should be noted that it's not just a US election cycle. This is a global phenomenon this year. A record percentage of the global population is going to vote in democratic, presidential, or national elections. And we've already seen in the elections that have taken place so far, 3 major ones: the pro-Bitcoin party, the pro-crypto party has won in every country, right, with kind of Argentina being perhaps the seminal event there. The second thing that's similar is the liquidity cycle. We may not see any large Fed interest rate cuts, but just general measures of liquidity, like M2 is now on the cusp of growing again year over year, and during the Bitcoin bear market, liquidity was really shrinking. And then the third thing that I think is similar this time is just the trend of generally wider digital assets adoption. So in 2020, it was DeFi summer, which onboarded so many users into the Ethereum ecosystem. 2024, we have Bitcoin ETF and Bitcoin L2 summer. So those are some of the similarities. In terms of what's different, a lot of folks mentioning about the pre-halving all-time high for Bitcoin. Personally, I don't read too much into that because we've just had such higher levels of general inflation in the world over the last 3 years that if you inflation adjust Bitcoin's rise, it hasn't yet hit an all-time high. Another thing that's different, which we could note just today, is the immediate reaction of the blockchain to the halving. Noticed that Bitcoin mining difficulty rose yesterday to hit another all-time high. That's changed. So if you look at the difficulty adjustments immediately following previous halvings, they were always negative, the first 2, sometimes significantly so. What's different this time is we have these new protocols on Bitcoin, ordinals and runes, which are clearly catalyzing additional transaction fees that are accruing to the Bitcoin miners, and maybe delaying some of the pain that generally takes place across the ecosystem as kind of higher cost Bitcoin miners have to grapple with their strategies going forward. So we're still quite optimistic and think that Q4 specifically with whichever of these candidates wins the U.S. election, both of them are the most fiscally profligate presidents in the history of this country. We think that investors are going to look back at this period of time, 7% fiscal budget deficits in the US with full employment. It's absolute insanity. It's going to look just as crazy as 1% interest rates did in the year 2000. So, we're worried about kind of a disorderly fiscal situation in the US. The year after the election is typically the only time when political parties can get together and grapple on big issues like the bankruptcy of Social Security. Is that really going to happen? If not, could be too late. So that's where we see kind of asymmetric upside to Bitcoin as that narrative gains wider adoption.
You brought up some really good points, especially with regards to how much we're spending with the deficit. It's basically like we're already in a recession, but technically we're not. And you're right about the miners as well. Typically, right after a halving, a lot of them shut down because because of that revenue shock. But here we're not seeing that, and fees are spiking and making up for it. So we'll see how that plays out. But Rena, how do you think this halving is different?
I think this has been the most fun halving that I've ever experienced. If you think about halving cycles, this is the first time it hit mainstream media. Everyone was talking about Bitcoin halving 4 years ago. Some people spoke about it 8 years ago, literally crickets. So to me, that was pretty exciting. And I think part of what makes it really exciting is just the new development and protocols built with Bitcoin. We've had ordinals really kind of spurring the Bitcoin builders and cultural shift of, can we do more with Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin no longer just your pet rock? But then even going to this particular halving on this block, Runes dropped. Runes is a new protocol creating a different fungible standard on Bitcoin. If you looked at Runes before the halving, just in testnet, $1.2 billion in testnet activity pre the actual protocol launching. And since April 20th, miners have generated over 100 million in rewards. 80 million was just transaction fees, largely due to Rune's activity because a lot of people are trying to create their first Rune right after the halving. And so I thought this halving was a bit different because we've created new incentives for miners that didn't necessarily exist in other halving cycles. And then the other thing that stands out to me that you mentioned earlier is we're in a different geopolitical climate. With all of the, let's say, wars going on, we're in this demand cycle where energy is no longer able to flow correctly across different markets. So with a lot of the trade restrictions and sanctions, you can't move oil. So this mining, especially in America, has increased to be more than 50% using renewable energy because oil cannot flow. And that's pretty fascinating because in the past, predominantly all mining was done by fossil fuels. So this halving cycle, we're green.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I had the chance to bring some executives together from public mining companies in a halving special that I did, and they talked a lot about that, about how there's this massive shift toward renewable energy. There's so many misconceptions out there by the general public that Bitcoin uses too much energy and it's not green, when in fact it's the polar opposite, and miners are incentivized to find that cheap electricity, which is often stranded or wasted energy, which is really, really exciting to see where all of that will go. Well, we're running out of time. We only have about 6 minutes left, but I want to get from each of you just kind of why we haven't hit a new all-time high adjusted for inflation, or that 100K price that so many people are looking for, and what will it take to get there in this halving cycle if you believe it will still happen? Matt, I'll start with you.
I think the election is the biggest event of the year in the U.S., and a red wave would just remove a lot of negativity around how regulators are going to tackle adoption of Bitcoin and other digital assets. And so that's really the wall of worry that we need to climb. And I think the upside is greater, under a Republican victory. And the polls have been creeping in the other direction, and the SEC has been dropping, enforcement actions on Uniswap. and then the typical kind of post-halving lull. So it's pretty common to have multiple 20 to 30% drawdowns post all-time highs. We're kind of in one of those right now, and as the institutional investors increase their adoption of these Bitcoin ETFs. And we think that's going to come. There's a story today about Morgan Stanley about to make these ETFs more available. A lot of our larger clients tend to be the regulated broker-owned asset managers, and they have not yet finished the macro models, these 60-40 models that we think are going to be more like 60-38 and 2. And as those drop, the Bitcoin flows should increase, and then the election will catalyze further price action. That's our take.
Maxim?
Few good points were mentioned. Remember that the way we are looking at sentiment when you do behavior analytics, it's a bit different angle. The main reason why we did not make a new all-time high is inside your question, because too many people expected it. And like really almost everyone, the moment we climbed to 70, 71, everyone believed, okay, now it's 100 next stop. And the market is the most complex game if you're playing it, and the most painful one, and supposed to be so. And it's by design, so it's never an easy one. So the moment the majority consensus crowd expect all-time high, it goes down. And as a condition, also when we make reports or even investment decisions, the condition for market to make all-time high when the substantial or majority believe it will not happen. And you can see it on variety of metric. Small hodlers start selling, decreasing there, or you see the talks. There are many metrics we can say, okay, now there is a very substantial wall of water established. Then we can go. So you actually should be wishing for wall of water. It's a very good condition environment when the market can go up. Yeah.
Well, I'm just happy that it's not 100 yet, so I can stack more, right? So, Rena.
It's another good way of looking at it. Yep.
I think it's only a matter of time until we get there. And what I predominantly look at or focus on how we're going to get there is the increased demand for block space. We're getting to the point that all of the, let's say, degenerate activity on the L1 is going to break the L1, and it's going to cause speculation in Bitcoin price and such. And so as more and more builders come into the space of wanting to build Bitcoin products, we're going to be looking at Bitcoin L2 season. It's already at this point that, I don't know, 100 L2s have claimed to be launching this year, and more and more developer activity is going to spur kind of new innovation and creation on Bitcoin, where people are going to demand to transform Bitcoin from a passive asset to a productive asset. When Bitcoin is moved into that productive asset of Bitcoin DeFi, we're already in Bitcoin art, Bitcoin RWAs. That's where I think we're going to get to that 100,000 and beyond.
Well, and I've said this before, but I just think each halving really demonstrates how elegant and predictable this programmatic policy is, and the bear markets have been for building. And I can only imagine what we'll see over the next 4 years into 2028, because so many people have been working hard to spur adoption, to build companies in the space, encourage people to really get use out of Bitcoin, so it doesn't just sit there. And so many companies are doing amazing things. So thank you so much to the panelists. We are wrapping up. If anyone has just a final thought that they want to leave people with as they watch the rest of the presentations, I'll just go by each of you, and Rena, I'll start with you.
I think we're in this truly magical period of Bitcoin. This is very different than any other life cycle of being in Bitcoin. Innovation is occurring. People are actually thinking of new BIPs, which have not occurred in multitudes of years. And the creative energy is here. We want to transform Bitcoin. No longer your pet rock, productive asset time.
Maxim?
Remember to stick to your own analysis, and don't be afraid if need sometimes to be against the majority expectations. Both way, too good, you should be worried, not so good, and people think too bad. It's okay to be good. It's most of the time contrarian in crypto. It's a good strategy. Just need to apply it properly to you.
And Matt, 5 seconds.
Builders out there, be careful about your token economics. Please don't engineer them for short-term pumps and then long-term dumps as these huge supply unlocks come. Those aren't the kinds of tokens that we are interested in. But thank you for building. Have a great event, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating in this panel, to all the viewers and listeners, and we'll see you soon.